We try these quick win strategies. I'm going to post everywhere, or I'm going to get Forbes on my website. That's not actually the thing that's going to build influence. People get paid to be in Forbes. People pay with their business to be in Forbes. It does not necessarily mean that they're the best person to help. You can't demand your authority in a room. Your authority has to be learned. It has to be perceived. It has to be felt. It's not about teaching information. It's about giving insight. Many of us want to be the authority in our category. We want to be a leader. But to be honest, all your marketing is so vanilla. Authority is the ability for you to be able to operate from choice and not from pressure. Authority is not something that you claim. It is something that you build. Hello and welcome back to Ambitious. Today, we are definitely going to be diving in over the next hour into what I want you to think about as a complete masterclass in building authority with your online business. If you are somebody who has had this word authority in your world, as I have, from the moment I started my business, there was this big emphasis on you have to have authority. You got to build authority. But a lot of us, number one, have been taught how to build authority in a way that is not actually helpful and not truthfully rooted in psychology. Second, we've also been taught outdated strategies. So the things that used to work in 2019 to build authority are not necessarily the same tactics that you should be using today to build your authority online. So today in the masterclass of authority, what I want to dive into is what actually is the impact of having authority in your business. Why is having authority with your platform, with your audience, actually a non-negotiable, and why you really need to care about your level of authority in your business? Two, we're going to talk about the fact of what it actually looks like when your authority is increasing. Because I think many of us might ask ourselves, okay, well, I've been told authority is important. I feel like I've been taking actions to build authority, but how do I know if this is actually doing anything? How do I know if this is generating outcomes or moving the needle in my authority in my business? And also, we're going to talk about what is typically taught online as to the tactics that people give you that they're like, this is the way to build authority. And I'm going to unpack why some of those also don't work. And lastly, I want to break down what are 5 actually true, tested, supported, psychology-backed approaches that you can start to integrate into your online business to help you build authority today. So without further ado, let's get into it. So one of the first things I want to talk about is why should we even care about authority, right? Because I think there is, again, when most people start their business, this emphasis of you need people to trust you. We know for a fact that people invest and people buy from people that they trust. And so many of us are taught that in order to get people to trust you, you need to have authority. But what really is the impact of authority? Meaning, why should you really care about this for your business? And what is it going to do, or what are the outcomes that you should see that will tell you that authority is something that's going to benefit or help and support to scale your business? So one of the first ones is actually going to be around sales. Sales are going to become easier and they're going to become quicker. And I literally listed out, I was brain dumping all the ways that I have seen authority change my business and the businesses that I work inside of. It is, you do not need to convince people to buy from you. You are not feeling like you're trying to really oversell your value and why people should invest or why they should pay your prices. You don't feel constant need to use urgency tactics, to have a last chance offer or a quick discount in order to get people to move. You don't feel like you have to over-educate and literally plead your case as to the value of what you do in your offer or service. And with this, you're also going to see a lot less comparison shopping. If you are someone who feels like you are notoriously having conversations, whether in the DMs or on the phone, where people are saying, yeah, I'm just kind of gathering information, I'm kind of shopping around, this is oftentimes a factor that tells us this person does not see you as a category of one. They don't see you as someone who is the leader within your category. You will see people who decide faster. And also with this, you will see people who have a lot less objections. If you feel like you are constantly getting objections from your audience, it can definitely be a byproduct of lack of authority. So when you have more authority within your category or within your business, you will see that people are kind of coming in almost pre-decided, pre-sold on you. If anything, the sales process is to get the final touches of questions that they have, but they're not necessarily at a place of needing persuasion or convincing in order to invest. And that is because the overall risk perception of investing with you is a lot lower because of the authority that you've built. So I want you to literally think the higher amount of authority that I have, the lower perceived risk somebody has of investing with you. And even for me, I saw this in my business because I had somebody even just recently who had found me online and, you know, basically followed me within 24 hours, had invested into one of our highest packages that we offer. And so with that, most people would say, like, how is that possible? But that is because there's kind of through all the marketing that I've put out, through the things that I have within my website, through all the pieces that I've planted in my ecosystem, those are pieces of authority that I have planted so that if a new person comes in, they're seeing all these markers that they need to feel the ability to easily move forward. They don't feel that there's a risk in investing with me. They feel certain because of what I've planted as seeds. And so as a side note, I'm going to break down for you later on today what those things are. So second, you're going to see, which is a big one, is that your client overall quality is also going to improve. So you're going to have less misaligned clients that are coming to you. So if you feel like you are having people that you're like, yes, this person wants to, hire my services. Yes, this person wants to invest with me, but I'm going to be honest, this person is not the ideal client that I really want to be working with. That can be a byproduct of lack of authority. You also will find that you're going to attract clients that are not pushing your boundaries as much. This is also something that I noticed. I felt like in the beginning of my business, I really was almost like feeling at the beck and call, or that I worked for my clients in the sense of the dynamic of energy was very imbalanced. I kind of felt, responsive to constantly like what my client needs, what they want, what they demand. And now I feel like because of the authority that I have in the business, I'm able to really set out standards of like, these are my boundaries, these are the expectations, this is the process, this is the response time. And that is not challenged, and it's deeply respected by the clients that I work with. So that was something though that I found became easier to enforce. And I also have to communicate it a lot less now because of the authority that I have in the business. And I don't know if you've ever had this, but clients will, when you have authority, trust your recommendations and they trust what you say. There's a lot less challenging. So if you've ever had, a client where you recommended a strategy, or you have a client that you recommended something for their package or for their service, or maybe if you're a coach, you've recommended something to a client and you felt like, why am I getting pushback when you literally hired me to help you and to tell you what to do? And now I'm doing that and I feel like I'm getting pushback. If that's something you're experiencing, it again can be due to a lack of authority. So when your authority has increased, you kind of will start to feel like your clients are sponges. They're just like, just tell me what to do and I'll do it, or just give me direction, I'll integrate it. There's this deep trust and almost, I would say, surrender that happens when you're giving advice. And that's because people trust it. So they are seeking to learn from you. They're seeking to absorb whatever your direction may be. And as a result, because of that, most people will integrate that advice or integrate those strategies with a lot less resistance. They're not going to be challenging you on the advice, and they're not going to challenge you in the process of integrating it. So I found the shift became, it was not a matter anymore of those questions of like, well, what do you think about this? And what would you do in this situation? Or what do you think? It was more a matter of, here's what I did. You can see people actively taking your advice or your insights and starting to integrate those quickly. So people are doing that because most people don't test leaders. If you've ever even potentially, played sports currently or back in the day, if you've ever been part of a team where you had a team leader or a team manager that you really trusted and that you knew was exceptional at what they did, there was this seeking to be guided. And that really does happen within our business as well, is when you are seen and perceived amongst your clients to be a true leader. And this also, by the way, happens with your team. If you are seen, whether through team or through your clients, to be a true leader, people are going to follow you. People are going to trust what you say. They're going to integrate the advice. They're not going to be questioning you and, asking more and more details. They're like, you know what? Sarah says go left, we go left because I trust her. I believe that she has the knowledge, the expertise, the understanding to guide us in the right direction. So if you find that people are challenging you, or that they're not taking the advice you give, or that they're not following the direction, there's a high possibility that you are not seen or perceived to be a leader or an authority amongst the people that you're trying to guide, whether that be through your team or through your clients. Now, the other thing that I find is that you also will see this greatly impact your marketing. And if I could kind of distill it down in a simple way, I find that a lot of the time when we are an authority in our category, there's a lot less about volume and it's more about the value or the impact or what I consider to be the insight of what you're posting. So you're not going to be in this thing of constantly chasing reach and I just need to hit more people and I just have to get more viral and all of this. You're going to find that old content you make is still converting because of the impact that it has. You will have people, which was something that I saw as a big alarm of authority or a big reinforcement of my authority, was I found that people were literally quoting my content, which was super weird initially, if I'm going to be honest with you. But I found that I would see people who were like, it's this post you put out. You said, what gets measured gets managed. And I was like, oh. Or someone would say, it was that post you put out that said, if you've got it, if it's a pattern, it's a problem. And when I started to hear people reiterate my marketing back to me, it was a really good indicator that there are these people that are diving into what I say. There are these people that really are thinking critically about the insights that I'm sharing. And so with that, it shows that people are listening. People are really wanting to be guided and they're trusting the advice that I give and it's landing. So if you feel like people are not able to reference your marketing, if you feel like people are not diving into multiple pieces, if you feel like a lot of your stuff is very short lived, it can be a sign of a lack of authority. And ultimately, there's just with building authority, this aspect of strategic leverage, which is basically the fact that, you can ask high level prices and not necessarily get as much kickback as if you had no authority within your category. I know for a fact that I have been on calls with people and I've said, hey, the price is this much. And I remember there was someone that had no previous relationship with them. So like, I didn't really know this person. And I remember them saying to me, they're like, that's like the price of a car. I was like, yeah, it is. And there was just this calm that I had because I knew and I felt confident and I felt solid within my pricing. But this person was like, okay, yeah, I didn't know anything about them. They were very new to my world. And they were like, yeah, let's do it. So what I realized was as well that over time, by planting so many seeds, my authority has increased. So there's a respect, there's a understanding of my pricing and not a matter of trying to negotiate it or challenge it or justify it. It's just like, it is what it is. And people are actively looking at it as, okay, this either makes sense for me and I can afford it, or it doesn't make sense for me and I can't afford it. And either are okay. With this, I also find that when you have more authority and more acknowledgement for the category that you're in, especially when many of us at the beginning of our business are told to niche down. A lot of us are told that we have to go really narrow, we got to go really specific. And over time, the more authority you have, I think the more you're able with success to be able to broaden your niche. So like when I first started with making content online or building my brand, it was very narrow. It was very much about specifically only at that time, really coaches. It was targeted toward people at a very specific stage. And then over time, I started working with more agencies. I've worked with lawyers, authors, digital products. Like it started to go a lot broader. But that was because I had to build that authority base from which to build out. And so I think there's this aspect of when you have more authority, you feel the ability to widen your niche a little bit and to be a little bit bigger of a brand and cover more spectrum than you would be if you were starting fresh. Because if you start fresh and you have no authority and you're talking about every color under the rainbow, people have no idea who you're for, what you do, and there's really no through line. Whereas if you've built this foundational base that people know you for, you can dabble in other things and it's not going to confuse your audience because there's this baseline understanding of what you represent. And the other thing that I would say is that authority ultimately, if I could put it almost like into a sentence, is that authority is the ability for you to be able to operate from choice and not from pressure. And there's this aspect of like freedom that comes with it. There's this aspect of agency that comes with having more authority. And that's because you're not feeling like you have to make decisions or operate and play to, what's supported or what's liked or what works. You're really able to carve your own lane because you have that authority built. So authority impacts literally every area of your business. So I don't want anyone to think that this is something that, having authority is something you care about in the beginning till you get a couple clients and then we kick it to the wayside. Authority is the base from which a lot of your business and the results you're looking for are built. Now, when we start an online business, we are taught all kinds of things as to what actually impacts authority. So one of the things that we hear or see a lot is this aspect of like, be everywhere. If you are everywhere, people will see you as an authority. So if I post more, if I'm on every single platform, people will see me as legit. And the thing that I will say I've seen with the people who try to be everywhere, when you try to be everywhere and you're not doing it intentionally, you're creating a lot of content. You're creating a lot of marketing. And so when you're creating a lot of marketing, the thing that I see most people miss the mark on is that you're trying to have a million different content ideas. You've got, bucket one, I'm talking about red today, and then blue tomorrow, and then purple, and then green, and then yellow, because you're literally just trying to pump out volume. And I get the idea, which is that, if people can't escape me, then of course they're going to see me as the go-to. But sometimes when you try to be everywhere, you really, in the emphasis of having quantity, really underestimate quality. And most importantly, within quality is consistency, and not consistency of posting, consistency of the message. Because a lot of the time when we try to have volume, our message, our through line of really what we want to be known for and how we want people to remember us, it gets lost. We really lose the essence of us and our authority of what we want to be known for in the process of just honestly posting so much and needing so many different marketing ideas to present online. So I want you to think the authority that you're looking for is going to be built through repetition of similar opinions, thoughts, and insight, not repetition of just simply volume of posts. Okay? So this is not a matter of just like, I got to get 15 videos out this week. I got to get, 5 emails out this week. If those 5 emails have different undertones, different insights to them that are all over the place, you could post those for the next 7 years and you may build no authority and no brand. Now, in the contrast, if you said, should I have these 5 where I feel really, really stretched and I feel like I'm struggling to come up with ideas? Or should I have 2 a week that are really consistent in the message? The insights are similar. There's a through line in my perspective. I would always rather you have 2 that are consistent amongst brand than simply just fire hose out all of these different pieces that are all over the place. So I want you to think that a high output, a high volume of marketing that is produced that doesn't have a consistent point of view throughout all of the pieces is literally going to do nothing for you. And I see this because many people will say, I just don't understand why I'm not growing. I don't understand why I don't have authority. I don't understand why my brand is not landing, or I feel like I have this like really activated community. I don't get it. And it's honestly because there's just so much content all over the place that has no real rhyme or reason to it or no through line to it, that as a result, I don't really know what you stand for. So how can I know that you lead this charge or this mission or this purpose or this club, if you will, when I don't even know what the consistent through line is here? One day you're talking about something red and the next day you're talking about something green. Unless there are different versions of red throughout every single post that you create, the volume will never move the needle in your authority and your brand presence and consistency. And it's a hard thing for people to learn, because if we're not having these conversations, we typically only learn this when we feel like we've been making content for the last 15 years and or what feels like 15 years, and we feel like nothing is moving. We feel like nothing has changed. And that's often because, to be honest, nothing has changed because you've been all over the place. So there's this aspect of volume of marketing. But the other thing we see taught online, which is kind of bucket number 2, is credential stacking. My goodness, the amount of times that I see business owners who are like, I want Forbes on my website. I want to have this credential of these letters beside my name. Let me be the person to let you know, you having letters beside your name or having Forbes or some magazine or article site on your site in itself is not going to be the basis of how you are seen as an authority for the next 10 years. Sure, is it something that might activate somebody emotionally who lands on your website? Maybe. But is it going to be the reason that you lead a movement of people in the next decade? Absolutely not. So what I see a lot of people make the mistake of is you believe that if you could just get that credential, if you could just be associated with a framework, if you could just get a certification, that you genuinely feel like that would finally make you legit. And I am here to tell you that when you have those accolades and you have those titles and you have all of that on your website or in your marketing, that's not what makes a leader. Because I will tell you, people get paid to be in Forbes. People pay with their business to be in Forbes. People pay to go through credentials. It does not necessarily mean that they're the best person to help. So yes, there's great value in credentials to do a certain type of job. Yes, if you happen to get published in Forbes, it's a cool thing to put on your website. It's a great accomplishment if you did it organically. But just simply having that in your marketing is not enough for someone to say, oh, I believe this person is a leader. And many of us can see this with, for example, celebrities. There's people who are celebrities that by definition should have influence. But there's celebrities that we know to be a celebrity that we don't feel influenced by in any capacity. And there's also probably a celebrity that you follow that even though they're just as much of a celebrity as the person next to them, one of them says, do X, and you're like, okay. And then the person you follow who you truly believe is a leader says, do X or care about X or buy X. And you're like, why do I feel like I want to buy this now? The difference is not whether, one is a celebrity and one's not. They're both celebrities. One of them for you actually is an authority in your life. One of them is actually a leader to you. And that's the basis of why we need to ensure that we're not just credential stacking or we're not just accolade stacking on our marketing or on our websites. You want to remember that while credentials, yes, can be an aspect of supporting authority, they do not replace lived experience or discernment. So when we follow someone, we want to follow somebody or we want to, be led by somebody that we feel is in deep embodiment. We want to feel like we follow someone, not just who has Forbes or Medium or whatever type of magazine or, the Today Show on their site. We want to follow someone who literally lives and breathes what their movement is, who lives and breathes their authority. And so just by having these, I want you to know, is not going to be enough to get people to actually want to listen to you. It's not enough for people to feel like they want to follow you in the sense of your mission and your movement. And it's not enough, truthfully, to be seen as an authority in your industry. Just having a number or a title is not enough. And with this, in the kind of same vein of marketing, is people that have these empty positioning statements of like, I help X person do Y, right? We all were taught this when we first started our business. You got to have the I help statement. What's the I help statement? And that caught on like wildfire. It was like everyone has to have the I help statement in their bio. And why this is not really something that's effective is number one, truthfully, because everybody does it. So if you are someone who feels like you've had that I help statement in your bio for the last, 3 years, it's probably not the thing that's making people actually want to hire you. And with the I help statement or those classic I help pieces, the thing that you're missing is you're missing insight and you're missing evidence on why the problem actually exists. So I want you to remember that authority is something that is demonstrated by how you think about a certain problem, not what you claim. Okay. So this is like really, really, really important. It is not about the fact that you claim to solve a problem that's going to build authority for you. It's about how you explain the how of how you solve problems that's going to make you an authority. So it's not about you claiming I'm the person. It's about you showing the insights that indirectly tell me you are the person. Okay. So you can't demand your authority in a room. Your authority has to be learned. It has to be perceived. It has to be felt. So this is the thing that I think a lot of people miss the mark on is like we try these quick win strategies. We try this, I'm going to post everywhere, or I'm going to get Forbes on my website, or I'm going to be like, I'm an expert at this in my bio. Putting that in your bio or putting a professional bio on your website or having it in a media kit, that's not actually the thing that's going to build influence. The thing that builds the influence that you're looking for is the consistency of the insight that you have in your daily deposits within your marketing and your brand. And one of the things that will instantly erode your authority that a lot of people often fall into is that we have, a lot of us, this deep desire to be liked. And so one of the things that I see people struggle with is that they're not at a place where they have a comfort level with being disliked. So we end up in this people pleasing bucket of whatever people want, I do, or whatever people are looking for, I create, or whatever price they want, I'm going to start to charge. What ends up happening is that we are over explaining things. We are trying to be liked versus actually be a leader. And even in marketing, we see this a lot with people who are not comfortable with having a polarizing opinion. And one of the lines that I tell my clients all the time is no one is going to stand with you if you don't actually stand for something. And so many of us want to be the authority in our category. We want to be a leader. But to be honest, all your marketing is so vanilla. You don't stand for anything. And then you're like, where's the people who are standing with me in my movement? You don't stand for anything. So if you don't stand for anything, how the heck am I supposed to stand with you? So one of the things that I just outlined for a client literally who just kicked off recently is I said, we need to establish like what actually are your brand beliefs? Like what are those things that you are willing to put a stake in the ground and say, this is who we are. And transparently, if you're not with this, then you're not with us because this is who we are and what we stand for. Many people try to be liked by everybody. They believe if I have a neutral enough message, if I'm vanilla, then everybody will probably in some way resonate with me. But truthfully, the people that build the most leadership and the people that build the most influence and authority are those who are willing to stand for something. They're willing to be polarizing. They're willing to put a stake in the ground and say, I'm not moving from here. So one of the things for me in business is I believe in heart-centered business. I don't believe in like, a bro marketing approach. I don't believe you need to bully people on the internet in order to make a sale. So if you're somebody who loves to bully people online as part of your scaling strategy, I'll tell you right now, I'm not the coach for you. I, number one, won't permit it in my world. And two, I'm not going to give you strategies that are rooted in that. I'm just not going to do it. So if that's something that is an essential piece for you of building your influence or your brand, you'll know that I'm probably not the person you want to hire. You may want to hire the louder coach. You may want to hire the more aggressive coach. You may want to hire the person who, in fact, does all that in their marketing right now. So you need, in order to build authority, you have to release this idea of people pleasing. You have to be able to stand for something. You got to put that stake in the ground and say, who am I and what do I believe? And most importantly, you have to be okay with other people not standing for that. And so if we want to actually build authority, I would say there's actually 5 ways that we're going to do this effectively. And I want to first preface that all the 5 that I'm about to explain to you, these are all rooted in science-backed approaches of why we follow authority, not just in business, but in life. And 2, they're rooted in psychology of influence. So these are principles that if you can master these within your marketing, within your brand, within your clients, your team, I can guarantee that in the next 6 to 12 months, you are going to see a big shift in the way that your audience resonates with you, the way your clients interact with you, and the way that your team even interfaces with you. And that's because we need in order for people to really follow us, to learn actually what makes us a leader and what actually creates our authority with the group. So without further ado, let's get to number one. Number one is pattern recognition. So I literally have like all my strategy notes here. So if you see me looking down, that's why I'm like, as I said, we're getting into masterclass territory today. So number one, pattern recognition. Remember I said before, when we have inconsistency within our marketing, it creates doubt in people. Pattern recognition is actually a root or a baseline fundamental thing of building authority. And that is because when we see repetition in something, we feel that it's reliable. Okay. So when we see repetition, we've got reliable. And when someone is reliable to us, our brain interprets that consistency as they are competent to lead. Okay. So I'm just going to go back to the front again. Repetition in message is what ultimately allows us to feel someone is reliable, which then ultimately is what allows us to feel that they are competent to lead us. So this is why when I said we have to make sure that things are really consistent in our message and our brand, this is why this is so important. So what we want to do is we want to have topics that we discuss all the time amongst our marketing. We want to have recurring patterns that we address as the core source of why your audience is stuck. We want to be able to explain why problems exist. This is a big piece, okay, for this bucket. Many of us talk about education. Okay, so we talk about tips and tricks. That was a huge thing years ago. If you just add value, if you just teach people, they will follow you. That's not actually what gets people to follow you. What actually is going to get people to see you as an authority is not you teaching them how to fix problems. It's actually you giving insight on why the problems exist in the first place. This is a really simple switch that you can make in your marketing. It is not teaching people how to fix them. It is teaching them how to understand and basically helping them to diagnose why what is happening. Okay. So think about going to the doctor or an emergency room. Okay. It'd be easy for anybody in that room when you are sick and you are feeling at your worst to say, hey, take this medication. Do you, just because someone hands you a medication, trust that person? No. But if that doctor comes in and says, hey, okay, so I know your symptoms have been feeling like A, B, C, D. I want to kind of break down what's going on internally within you. So bucket one, we're seeing this. Bucket two, this is what's happening. And bucket three, if we don't get this medication integrated, here's what's going to be the impact. Who do you trust? The person who broke down the entire problem or just the person who handed you the medication? The person that we put our trust into, we put our energy into, the person we truly feel led by is the person who's given us insight around our problem, not just taught us how to fix it. And this is something that many people, when we think about adding value, I tell people it's not about teaching information, it's about giving insight. Okay, so that's the contrast I want you to think about. It's not about we're teaching information anymore. We need to give insight to what someone's problems are. And one of the things that is really important is we do not want to go surface level, okay? You're looking, remember I use that word diagnose. I want you in your marketing to speak to what is the root cause of what someone's experiencing. So oftentimes in my marketing, I'm going to kind of break the fourth wall for you here. You're going to see that I will break down and say, here's the root of what's going on. So even today, to break the fourth wall, I've done that. I've said to you, hey, here are some things. There's some insights I want to share. And here's the root of what you're doing. Here's the problem or the source that you have of your problem when it comes to authority. So the reason I give, a lot, and as I said, I really try to think about every single episode as a masterclass, is because I try to give insight. If I just said, go do this, go do this, go do this, and I never gave you context as to what the problem was, where it's coming from, and what the impact is of you not fixing it or of you fixing it, you would never care about anything I say, because guess what? It would just be more information. It would just be more of a textbook being taught to you, more of a 3 tips. The thing that allows something to have impact is if you can actually add insight to the problem, not just information on how to fix it. So when you articulate what someone is experiencing before they explain it, the brain of that person listening to you is categorizing you as an expert. They're like, this person clearly gets me because I've been doing all of this. I've been experiencing all of this. So there's this aspect of deep trust that you're building with the person who's watching you or listening to you. So you want to explain why problems are existing, not just how to fix them. And here's the other piece. We need to cut back on the expert language. So, one of the things that I always tell people is in your marketing, when you try to sound smart, you're actually doing the complete opposite. Because what you're doing by trying to sound smart using complicated models, complicated explanations or analogies, you're using complicated expert language that you use within your team or in your industry. And you're like, well, this is going to make me sound legit. The thing that actually is going to make you sound legit is taking something that is uber complicated and simplifying it so someone in grade 6 could understand it. That's actually what is going to allow the message to land, to be understood, and to be integrated. What most people perceive as, oh, if I use this complicated language, people are going to finally listen to me. What you're actually doing is you're making it 10 times harder for the person to even understand what you're saying. And so then no one's getting the message. No one's understanding the message. And as a result, it's literally bouncing off of me and I'm not absorbing any of it. Instead, people who have actual authority and leadership don't feel an insecurity around simplifying things. They know that if they simplify something, then they're going to be able to impact more people because my insight's going to be absorbed. It's not going to be, what does that mean? What is that analogy? What does that acronym stand for? There's not confusion. Simplicity of message is also something that allows you to scale your message. And with this, simpler explanations are also going to be perceived as higher authority because you're not putting strain on the person listening to you. Like nobody wants to listen or follow somebody or be led by someone that they go, okay, like I didn't absorb any of that. I'm gonna have to come back to this later. The thing that is the root of that though is not having an insecurity. That's really the thing that I would say trips people up with this is they think, well, if I don't use complicated language and if I don't use expert language, are people going to see me as smart? Are they going to see me as the expert? Are they going to see me as influential within this category? And the short answer of that is yes. Let's go back to our analogy of the doctor. If the doctor came in and started using all these acronyms and talking about different veins and levels of hormones in your body that you've never heard of before, you're sitting there and you're thinking, I don't know what the heck this person just said to me. If they say, hey, your brain has this really simple system that does X, and right now yours is not talking to each other. That's very simplified language of something that you and I both know probably has a ton more medical terms as to how that person could explain it. But there's a reason that they don't explain it in their terms because we would never absorb, which means we'd never actually take in the insights they're sharing. So if you want to share things and also have them absorbed, you have to simplify your message. So the first one is all about pattern recognition, which is that we need to have consistent patterns, consistent ways that we talk about insights, consistent topics we discuss, problems we use, simplified language, simple explanations. It's really about the consistency of the message and the simplification of the message. Now, the thing that I would also say is going to be kind of a bucket two, kind of added on to this, is consistency of perspective. Nobody wants to be led by someone who feels like they do have a change in their message all the time. So generally speaking, one of the biggest predictors of somebody being seen as credible is if they are consistent, meaning that they're not kind of switching which sides they're on each day or each week. So I noted in behavioral science, fluctuating signals are interpreted in our brains as uncertain, low conviction, and someone is seen as an opportunistic person. So even I watch marketers who do this. I followed somebody and I was like, this is mind boggling. Is anyone else picking up on this? Like one day they're like, this is the way to scale. And I was like, okay, great. And then 2 days later, they were like, never do that. This is the way to scale. And I was like, if I put these two videos beside you, these two videos just completely contradicted each other. But this person is so opportunistic that it's just like, whatever I can say to get someone activated today, I'm going to say that. And what we find is that a consistent point of view is the thing that allows someone to feel that you are predictable, as I said earlier. And that predictability is safety. And so if we don't have that, we're losing people. And so as soon as I saw this person's marketing, I saw one video was like, you got to do this. And then video two, like literally a couple days later, they must have someone helping with their marketing because I was like, any average person would see the two that these are just completely different. The other piece goes out and I'm like, these are literally combating ideas. So it was mind-boggling to me that this person has any influence, because I was like, they don't realize they're killing their brand by doing this. People recognize that you're just saying what needs to be said in the little micro moment with no actual perspective of the macro lens of what do I stand for and who am I? So you have to anchor to a set of core beliefs and you have to repeat them across everything. I want to be clear here. This is not just marketing. One of the other things that we see is that someone will say something within their marketing and they completely contradict that perspective once you hire them. So, someone will say, oh, don't do paid advertising. That doesn't work. Or don't do, SEO. That doesn't work in their marketing. And then you get into their offer and you're like, hey, we're going to help you to build out your SEO funnel. What? So there's a disconnect. The congruency is essential. And I want to echo, this is not just in marketing, it's in everything. It's making sure that what you say in your marketing is what you say in sales. What you say in sales is what you say in your offer. If you are breaking beliefs between these different parts of the business, you are actually breaking your authority every time that you do it. So people trust leaders that they feel that they can anticipate. You ever felt led by someone, maybe at a job, or as I said, in sports, it could be anything. And you kind of, when you have a situation or a problem, you almost perceive or you predict how you think they're going to respond. If we can't predict what we anticipate they're going to have as a response, we really don't have a lot of trust in that leader. One of the things that allows us to feel safe is predictability. So you want to, as a result of this, really try to be conscious of how you're using trends within your business. Okay. So I want to be very intentional with this. I am not saying by any means that you should not be doing trends in your business. I think that trends have a place. I think that they are effective. I think that they do, in fact, work. But the problem I see with people who leverage trends is that the trends are oftentimes, again, taking that kind of like the quick win. They're taking the quick moment that can get a little boost of a surge of momentum or a surge of attention or a surge of visibility. But they don't think about, does this trend actually go against what I stand for? Or does this trend go against who I am? And so oftentimes if we don't cross-reference that, you're doing things for the quick win, which are ultimately leading to long-term detriment of your brand and authority. So you want to be careful that in moments of wanting more sales in your business, in moments of wanting to generate more attention, wanting to generate more momentum, that you're not just going always for that quick win, because if you do, you could be actually, by doing so, literally eroding your own authority as we speak. Now, the third is discernment and boundaries, which is basically where, this is kind of the nerdy part of this, but social hierarchy research of like how we actually categorize things in our brain basically says that the ability to say no, being selective, and not having aspects of urgency are actually what are interpreted to be a high status signal to our brains. So if you've ever watched someone who's got really good boundaries, you've watched somebody that is really intentional with their time, is really selective with their energy, very like intentional about how they move within either their life or business, there is kind of this like unspoken respect you have for that person because you see the way in which they respect themselves. So high status people or high authority people, they often do not need to convince, and they often don't need to make accommodations always at the beck and call of other people. They make really intentional choices. So one of the things I would say here is that they're not really into being super reactive. People of authority are not, whatever you need, I do it. And whatever you say, I'll do it. And, I'm going to convince this person. It's like, if this person doesn't see my value, I'm unattached. If this person demands this, but that's not going to work for me, it doesn't work for me. They're really settled within their conviction of themselves and their boundaries, their energy. And they have a really strong ability, frankly, to say no. And they're very selective with the people that they're around, the clients they work with, the things that they accept within their team. Boundaries as a leader and as somebody of authority, I want to be clear, boundaries are a power signal. There's someone recently that I started following, and it was really interesting. I was kind of like, as a consumer, evaluating it. And as part of their process, they do not have sales calls. You cannot automatically book a call with them. Like, there's a very selective process. So what they do is you fill out their application. Part 2 is you pay to apply to their program, right? So it's probably like, a couple $1,000s. You pay to apply to their program. And with that, then they review your application to see if you're a good fit. And they basically say, hey, we have a very limited capacity of how many people we take on. We'll see if you're a good fit. And based off of that, we'll get back to you. So it was interesting because when I was kind of thinking about it, I was like, this aspect of, we're very selective with who we take on. They are not urgent in getting back to you. You're not getting like an instant 5-second book a call here. There's an aspect of also kind of this lens of power because you have to pay to apply to work with them. Granted, that amount goes toward working with them, but still. So you still have to pay to work with them. And so when I was kind of stepping back and evaluating the process, I thought, well done, because there's this lens of selective, non-urgent, high authority. And even if you didn't know who they were, just even probably me explaining this, you're thinking, okay, wow, like who is this person that they feel like they can have this as their process, right? It kind of breaks our brain a little bit. But what it does is it positions them in a fantastic way as an authority. And here's the thing, it wasn't like an arrogance thing. All the marketing is very nice, it's very considerate, it educates you in the process. It's not this, oh, you're not worth my time talking to. They just explain why they're selective and how their process works. And this is, we're very intentional with who we work with. There was this deep respect that was explained in the process. And so it was really interesting because what it did is the enforcing of the boundaries of this business actually, truthfully, created a really, really deep respect. I instantly was like, I have deep respect for this person because of the way in which they approached it. So when you are selective with the clients that you work with, when you are selective about the opportunities you take, when you, state, which is a big thing in marketing, who do you work with and who are you not for? It's the people who feel like they have to work or take on anybody and everything that typically don't have a lot of people who respect them. And that's simply because they are open to everyone and everything. There's no aspect of organization. There's no aspect of being selective as to who they're for and who they're not. And one of the things that I found, even with this example of this person that I saw, there was no over justification. They didn't feel the need to over justify their process, over justify, the steps that you have to take, to over justify why you need to pay and why this is important. It was just like, hey, this is our process. And we have this process for the following reason. If that doesn't work for you, we wish you all the best of luck with your business. It was really respectful and it was short and sweet and it was confident and it was rooted in like real conviction for how they do things. So I would say when we have this aspect of being selective in our business, selective with our energy, selective with our time, selective with our boundaries, with the clients that we work with, there is this deep perceived value of you as a brand and you as a business. And as a result, there's this really high perceived value with your leadership and with the authority that you have in your space. Now, number 4, I would say out of the 5 is probably something that I have the biggest issue with when it comes to the way that people do authority. And as a result, it's the biggest opportunity that you have with authority, in my opinion, which is the integrity that you have after a sale. Because listen, in this online world, we have a lot of narrative and a lot of conversations around messaging and marketing and content and say this to get people to move. There's a lot of conversation around that. And obviously, it's very valuable. Marketing is a really important part of online business. But one of the things that people from like a psychology perspective is really important is expectation confirmation theory, which is a big word that is not super important for you to remember or memorize. Ultimately is a matter of trust is strengthened when these 3 things happen. Number 1, your experience matches the expectation of the experience you had. 2, people are consistently showing up the way that you expected under pressure. And 3rd, standards are upheld even when it's uncomfortable. Okay. So this is really the basis of integrity. Authority is reinforced when people experience what I was promised is what I received. And authority collapses when leaders overcompensate, they blur boundaries, or there's a mismatch between the messaging and what the delivery was. Expectations are not consistent or they're not consistently upheld. And as a result, it's all over the place. Okay. I'm trying to think how I can talk about this in a concise way. I had somebody that I knew in the online world, and there was some big, bold claims within the marketing. And then I start to hear these stories from others in the industry of the delivery. And it was like in the marketing, we're going to help you do this and you're going to get here and you're going to achieve X. And then here I am literally having conversations with people who are inside the offer and they're like, none of that could be further from the truth. Like this person's like, I'm in it with you. And like, I, get into it with you. And I'm right on the front lines with you kind of thing in your business. And then this person was like, I got passed off to somebody and I've never talked to that person in the last like 6 months. So there was a massive disconnect between what was being said in marketing and what was happening inside the offer. And the crazy piece is that this person was literally burning through clients, burning through, people in their world because they were just literally saying anything and everything in their marketing. But then the people inside were like, wait a second, this is what we were promised and we're definitely not getting this promise. So we were promised support. We're not getting support. We were promised massive quick wins and these like quick momentum and this surge of cash, for example, or the surge of scaling, but that's not really happening. We were promised customization. Everything is a blueprint. So there was this deep disconnect. And so what ended up happening is literally the people that I ended up speaking to, which is very sad, to be honest, felt like there was a bait and switch. And so over time, while maybe in forward-facing marketing, people perceived this individual to be an authority in their category, as soon as someone got into the world of what they actually did, it all started to dissolve. It all started to basically die. And that was because there was such an incongruency between what this person said and what they actually did. And so, it's sad because if this person had said this in marketing and actually upheld this within their delivery, actually upheld this within what they do with their clients, they would take over their category. There's no question. Because like not only are they claiming this, but they're actually doing it. They're actually showing up in that way and they're actually providing that service. So the thing that I would say is something I want you to really assess is, do you feel, or what level of confidence do you have that your marketing and what it is that you put out actually is congruent with your service? And I think that this is a hard one for a lot of people to acknowledge because sometimes brands are unintentionally putting things in marketing or kind of having these claims out or saying certain things because they're like, this is what works in our marketing. And it may work in your marketing, but if you don't actually follow through with it, you're doing a lot more damage than you might think. And that is because we know that when someone invests in someone and they're underwhelmed. So I had another peer of mine, she invested in somebody or she was thinking about investing with somebody. And I said to her, just make sure you do your research. Cause I was like, I don't want to ever speak badly about somebody, but I said, just make sure you do your research. Go in making this an educated investment. And, she did for like 30 seconds. And so she went in and she went to go invest with this person. And she's like, yeah, I like looked at their website. I looked at this and I said, well, I would do a little bit more, investigation than that. I think I would go a little bit deeper. But she was so excited to buy that she was like, no, I think I'm just going to do it. Like they said X this time in their marketing. Like obviously it's what they do. So anyway, I catch up with her like a year later and she was like, I also want to say like, I was so wrong and you were so right. I really should have done more homework. She was like, now that I look back, there were so many glaring signs that this was not the right investment for me. And I made that investment anyways. And so it's hard because if you don't do the research of congruency, and what I mean by that is like, if you're investing, for example, ask to talk to that person's clients, ask to, look at, have they worked with an industry like yours? Ask the critical questions, get the information to really make an educated choice, because sometimes there is that incongruency between what's in marketing and what's in delivery. And if we don't do our own investigation, we might be investing in businesses or brands that have that same inconsistency. And it's also an opportunity for you to reflect, do you feel that there's anything that maybe you've been saying or doing in the front that hasn't been fulfilled in the back? And so that's just something for you to kind of reflect on and audit. The last is going to be your credibility signals, which really are, I would say, mental shortcuts. So an easy way that I would reference this is what I consider to be borrowed authority. So this is actually something I recommend quite a bit to people who are building their authority right now, is to borrow it. So, okay, you'll even see potentially in marketing people who will have like a Gary V video, and then they'll stitch it with their opinion. What they're doing when they do that to break the fourth wall is that they're borrowing the authority of Gary Vee and they're piggybacking their insights on the back of it. The reason that that works is because if you basically trust Gary Vee and this person adds value to Gary Vee's clip, they're leveraging the authority of Gary Vee in that video. Another example would be, for me, even in this podcast, I'll break the fourth wall for you. I oftentimes will, in some episodes, discuss stats. So if there's a topic that I want to talk about that I'm like, I really need to hammer home for people how important this is or how prevalent this is, what I'll do is I will literally get stats and I will research how relevant something is. So that if I say, this is a big problem. So I had an episode way back when that I did about friendships and like the loneliness epidemic that we have right now. And so it's one thing for me to sit here and say, oh, we have a loneliness epidemic. People are like, okay, how do you know? Or like, how significant is it? If I say, I just listened to a podcast the other day, I don't exactly know what the source is, to be full transparency, but they were talking about how 40% of all individuals will be single, choosing to be single and childless within the next decade, which is crazy. But if I'm talking about relationships, or I'm talking about being single, or I'm talking about starting a family in an episode, and I give you that stat, number one, that's not my stat. It's pulled from somewhere else, but what it's doing is it instantly gives credibility to what I'm sharing or the perspective that I have or the lens that I'm taking. So one of the things that I really believe in is borrowed authority, which means you can pull from people, you can pull from other platforms, you can pull from other perspectives and use that to support the point that you're trying to make, especially if you think that the thing that you're talking about is not necessarily something that people automatically see you as an authority in. So even to this day, I've been doing this for the last 7 years in my business. Even to this day, I always am borrowing authority, which basically is there a source that I can get, or is there another, person that I know my audience trusts, or that I know my audience would appreciate, that I can borrow their perspective. I can borrow that information and I can add my own information onto it to further support my point. This is something that I would say a lot of people don't leverage enough. But if you do, it's a very easy way to shortcut authority, because we have our trust in certain sources. We have our trust in certain people, in certain platforms, in certain, publications. So again, if I'm recording an episode and I say, Forbes did a study on this, you might not trust what I say about that topic. But if I say Forbes did a study to back up the point that I made, you're like, oh, I didn't know that. And so now there's this aspect of trust. So you can cite or you can refer to other peers, other publications, other sources that are respected. You want to use basically proof. So I use other platforms to transfer trust. I use social proof to transfer trust. And ultimately, a lot of us have the ability, if we borrow authority from other people, to use that as a tool while we build our own authority. So if you have a lot of points that you're trying to make and you're like, well, who's going to listen to me on this topic? Go research it. Go find somebody else, of a person or a platform or publication who has already discussed this that your audience would respect, and pull information to support your point. It's a really easy way that I've been doing for multiple years, and it works very, very well. What I hope you take from today is that authority is not something that is just a title on your website. It is not just something that you put in your bio. If I could distill it down, authority is built over the daily deposits and practices of how you're showing up in your business. It's, something that you can do within your brand and marketing. It's something that happens in your sales process. It's something that happens in your delivery. It happens with your team. It happens in little micro moments. Authority is not something that you claim. It is something that you build. And one thing that I hope is that with these different things we discussed today, you can, number one, understand why focusing on building authority is actually a very important piece. As we talked about earlier, it really does impact your business, and it creates this flow and this ease and this surrender of those in your world. Surrender from your team that will follow your lead. Surrender in the sales process of people respecting your process and your prices. Surrender in your marketing of people wanting to actually be led by you because you are a thought leader. These are things that if you want to feel more ease and flow in your business, we need to care about. But the most important thing is that we're doing it right, that we're not just, putting a random, article or something like that on our website and thinking, boom, I've done authority. I want you to think of authority almost similar to that of marketing or that of sales. This is something that you should be integrating into your world and into your execution every single week, because it is literally like planting a seed. It's going to need to be nurtured. It's not something you do overnight, but if you do focus on this, I can guarantee you, you will start to see those benefits in 6 months or in 12 months. And most importantly, you're going to see these greatly impact things when you look up, a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road. The authority I have today, the prices that I charge, the way my marketing activates, the things that happen inside my offer are not the same as they were when I first started. The experience of my business has greatly changed because of the intentionality that I've put in to building authority over time. And so I want to invite you to maybe even just take one thing from today. Maybe there's one thing you want to reflect on, there's something you want to audit, maybe there's something you want to integrate into your business. So by no means you have to take this whole aspect of information and do 15 things today. Just focus on one. Take one piece and say, you know what? I'm going to create a piece of marketing this week that borrows authority. Or I'm going to, audit my marketing this week to ensure that my message is consistent and that my perspectives are consistent. These are just small actions that you can take. And with taking those over time, you're going to see a big shift in your authority, in your business, and online in general. So with that being said, I hope today was helpful. Of course, as always, I always love hearing from you. So if there is any questions that you have about authority, or maybe even there's just something that I said today, or a perspective, or one of the 5 categories that you feel really landed for you, whatever your insights, questions, or shares, feel free, as always, to reach out to me on Instagram. I love connecting with you guys and having conversations about what's landing in the aha moments and light bulbs. But with all that being said, we will see you on next week's episode. And as always, stay ambitious.